All right, Marco Palmero, founder of Ulysses in Dubai. In this video, we're going to cover a very interesting topic, which is it a good decision to buy a business or small business for 100% cash up front? And I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion because it's going to address concerns of both buyers and sellers. So if you are a buyer looking to acquire a small business, this video is helpful for you. If you're a seller looking to sell his business, then you're going to get a useful insights about whether or not you can expect 100% cash payment upfront. So let's dive into this topic and let's discuss my thoughts and my perspectives around 100% cash payment upfront. Now, when it comes to small business acquisitions, I don't believe that 100% cash payment is the right way to go about doing things for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's putting a lot of risk on the buyer, which of course many buyers, if they're savvy enough, will shy away from. In addition to that, it doesn't allow the buyer to access the best opportunity for his money. And what I mean by that is actually quite simple. If a buyer has, let's say, $1 million that he wants to allocate towards business acquisitions, he would rather acquire a business that is much larger in size and maybe use some leverage or bank financing instead of putting 100% cash down and buy a smaller business. The reason is quite simple. Of course, less risk for him. Then he can acquire a larger opportunity that has bigger cash flow. And so his returns can be much quicker. And in addition to that, he can attack a business that is much more stable, because the bigger it is, the better, generally speaking. Now, in addition to that, 100% cash up front is, in my opinion, not the right solution, because it doesn't tie the other party to the transaction, but it makes it like almost like a supermarket sale, right? You see a product that you like, you look at it, you like it, you want to buy it, you pay for it, and you take it home. But business buying is not the same, right? We're talking about an asset, a breathing organism that you want to manage and that you want to transition under the new ownership. And as a consequence of that, you might want to retain the past ownership so that the business can be transitioned properly. And if you do 100% cash upfront payment, chances are you're not going to be able to retain the other side, because he's not going to be heavily invested in the deal. And that kind of brings me to the selling side, in saying most sellers should expect buyers to request them to stay for a certain amount of time, because it's just the way it is. Small businesses are just too heavily reliant on the old owner to allow a clear cut at closing. And so when it comes to buyers, 100% cash up front is very inconvenient, is very risky, and it doesn't really justify the risk, because you can take the same risk and acquire a much better opportunity that is going to give you much better returns over time, and is potentially even a better business, because you can access leverage, you can access outside capital, you can do joint venturing and many other structures to get the most out of your money. So from a buyer perspective, I think 100% cash up front is a no-go. It's absolutely insane. I wouldn't want to get involved in a deal where somebody asks me to buy 100% of the business for a lump sum payment. So with that being said, what are the solutions? And then we will get to the seller side, so that we can talk a little bit more about what the seller can expect. And if you're a seller, stay till the end of this video so you can get a little bit more insight on that. Now, some of the solutions that I would want to contemplate as a buyer are, first of all, deferred consideration of some kind. So the owner will have to defer part of the payments and receive those money, this proceeds, in installments. And that, of course, is up to you to decide based on the business, the cash flow, and your own deal structure. but a portion of the payment, in my opinion, should always be deferred. In addition to that, you might have an earnout structure for another portion of the payment. Sometimes people package the two things together, so the deferred consideration becomes the earnout. I'd rather keep them separate, to be frank, because then I get a lot more coverage, and I can keep the seller highly incentivized in the success of the business. So that is solution number one, and number two, of course. So deferred consideration, earnouts. Then, of course, once you got these two things in place, you can also plan a transition period for the owner, where he will stay for a certain amount of time and provide his knowledge and expertise, either as a contractor, as an employee, or with some other solution. But the point is, it's much more difficult to have this structure in place if you don't have the owner retain some money. Because if you pay 100% upfront, then yes, he can say, I'm going to stay with you, but then you have no leverage over him, right? And I've seen so many cases around the world where owners got paid and then they disappeared. They promised they were going to stay for 3, 6, 9 months, but then they never fulfilled the promise. And so that is a kind of like a point that buyers would want to keep in mind, but it is contingent on having a portion of the payment deferred. Now, another thing you might want to consider, and I generally consider that too when I'm a buyer, is that part of the cash up front that I'm paying doesn't necessarily have to be my own money. In some cases, it might not even be my money at all. It can be bank financing and other things. So from that perspective, you can still have a huge down payment, but that down payment might not be your own capital. And so you can still reduce the risk even more, despite the fact you're putting down a lot of cash at closing. But now, in terms of the sellers, what are some of the things you want to be aware of if you are a seller? Well, first of all, if you are expecting 100% cash up front at closing, you're delusional. And I'm going to be just straightforward, because any buyer who's a little bit savvy about this process is never going to give you that. So either you're trying to hit the jackpot and you're not serious about selling your business, so fine, you're just wasting your time and other people's time. But if you really are serious, you should really reconsider your approach. And I'm saying this also because I feel it's in your own best interest. Because if you think about it, if you have an expectancy that is 100% cash up front and you're dealing with buyers who are savvy, most of them are going to pass on the deal. They're not even going to entertain the option. And so you're going to reduce your chances of selling the business. And you're going to have to spend tons of hours and time and talk with a lot of people before you actually get to a close, if you ever get one, which I doubt. But the point is, if you open up the door for some sort of payment structure, then you become much more attractive to a lot more buyers, which is good for you, right? In some cases, you might even get a better price out of the business, because when you accommodate a turn that is, so to speak, comfortable for the buyer, then you are able to demand maybe a little bit more money, right? And so this is ultimately in your own best interest. And as you open up the door for that opportunity, you also need to understand that any savvy buyer will look at 100% cash upfront payment as a huge red flag. Because if you were a buyer, would you really buy a business where somebody's asking you to pay everything up front and then you don't know what he's going to do? Chances are you wouldn't do that, right? Because the point is, I'm paying all the money to a guy who built a business over 15, 20, 25 years. Now I don't know what's going to happen next. He might disappear, and this business might not even be the business he pitched us, right? There might be something shady hiding, and there might be a lot of things that are not working properly. And so a lot of buyers will look at the demand for 100% cash up front is a huge red flag, because they will say, well, maybe this guy is trying to hide something, right? Now, I'm not saying that you are trying to hide something in specific, but that's how buyers are going to perceive that. And I'm telling you because I look at businesses that I want to buy every single day. So that's how we think. Now, from that perspective, once you open up the door a little bit, then you gain access to a lot more buyers, a lot more solutions, and you can potentially get the deal done a lot quicker, which is, of course, good news for you. And I feel that, 100% cash up front is really a myth. Most people get hot and bothered by these types of structures because maybe they see crazy transactions in the stock market or public companies that get bought out for cash. But those are very unreal cases. I mean, if you're talking about small business acquisitions, you're in a completely different environment, and you must get used to that if you really want to be successful, either at buying or at selling the business. And so as a seller, as you look at the opportunities, you accommodate a little bit of payment plan, and also be aware that the more you're involved in the business, the longer people are going to ask you to stay in the business after they bought it. And that is just the reality of things, because if you are the main guy, it is important for them to have some sort of continuity. And so this is just my recommendation. I'm not saying that you have to do this or you should do this, but if you're really thinking about selling the business, maybe you should consider progressively transition yourself out of the business so that you can make it more palatable for people, and you can also avoid them asking you to stay for, let's say, 12 or 24 months, for example. And so in this particular video, I wanted to address the concept of cash up front, 100% cash up front in this case. I don't really believe that is an option. From a buyer perspective, it doesn't make sense. From a seller perspective, you're going to be delusional if you think you can get it. And even in the Middle East and UAE, where a lot of people think they can get cash up front, most of them are getting, they're not getting what they want because they wait and wait, hoping they're going to hit the jackpot, but that jackpot never comes. And this is an interesting story. I'll actually tell you a little bit about that because I think it's very, very funny. Dubai, it's commonly known as a place where people have a lot of money, people are very wealthy, a lot of people are millionaires, and so on and so forth. So many people believe that once they go ahead and sell something, they can ask for the moon and get it. The problem is they don't understand that people who have a lot of money also are smarter than they are. And in most cases, they got a lot of money because they knew, and they always know how to allocate it properly. And so they rarely will overpay for something because they understand the business dynamics better than other people. And so I've seen so many cases where owners listed the business that were asking for, again, crazy multiples or crazy amount of money, but they never sold the business, and they kept spinning this thing, hoping somebody will come around, but that opportunity never comes. And the reason why it never comes is because nobody is stupid enough to do that, okay? It doesn't really matter how much money you have. If somebody understands the business dynamics, he's not going to give 100% cash up front to somebody. And this is just the reality of things, especially in UAE. I mean, it really hurts me because sometimes I see people who are very delusional and they expect the moon. And then when you tell them the truth, they almost react, surprised or act like offended, although we're just telling them the truth, right? And the problem is Dubai, UAE are acting on false perceptions a lot of times because everything is pumped up a lot, and people believe the world and business operate on certain criteria, but that is rarely the case, even in a country like this, because people know what business is all about, and when it comes to buying an asset, they're very savvy. So cash up front, 100%, very hard for me. I wouldn't want to get involved in it if I'm a buyer. For sellers, again, hopefully these advice can help you. If you have any points that come to mind, let me know in the comments. I'll be interested in having a conversation around this, and I'll see you in the next.